Alright, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. My name is Derek Wells. This is my presentation for ITD 2413, Enterprise Security Management. Today I'll be doing my presentation as a review of the laptop security policy for the National Health Services in the United Kingdom. A little introduction and background, like the title states, this is a laptop security policy. It was written for the National Health Service. That is a publicly funded medical service in the United Kingdom, in charge of all that. It's published in 2008, so it's a little bit dated, but I mean definitely still usable and current. This policy is based on international standards, so where things are a little different here than there is over there. Most of our policies embrace the same things, so you see a lot of similarities, so both kinds of policies are usable. It only specifically mentions laptops in this policy, so we need to be aware of that there may be a different policy for things like smartphones, that later on they may have put apps on smartphones or tablets or something like that. Those need to be addressed or included in this if it were to be updated. Policy is aimed towards overall security, but places special parameters on laptops outside of the secured company network. So, it does give us general things like access control lists, antivirus software, different protocols for external devices, things like that. But it also places a special emphasis and a few extra parameters for when the laptops go outside of the secured network. And that becomes a problem because obviously you can't control who's listening in on a outside network, or who could be possibly intercepting, or where all of the data is getting transmitted to, things like that. So it's an extra layer of security on top of that. Let's see. Here we go. How I went about doing it, quote unquote. First thing, I looked for some policies that were similar to or mentioned laptops and mobile devices and usage and things like that. The first one I found was actually mentioned in the laptop. Let's see, let me just pull it up here. Bring it over here. It's actually mentioned in the policy. It's the ISO IEC 27002. This basically just goes over security of equipment off premises, mobile computing communications, provides some general overviews and policies that are good to implement within. And those can be read by looking at the publication. Like I said, it's cited by the policy, and it's also a general policy, so there wasn't a whole lot of bullet points that you saw, but it does provide some general security information and special things you need to consider. The big policy I use is actually the NIST 1800-1, Securing Electronic Health Records on Mobile Devices. It does say mobile devices, so this does include things like smartphones and laptops and tablets and all the other things and doodads that come out. So it's a little more complete. However, this is in a drafting phase, so it's not whole yet, but user input has been submitted, so it's already closed, but they're about to release an official release of it, so that's good. It'll be able to help a lot of companies transition into a more digital era. Current, like I said, it's in 2015, so obviously it's within about a year of being first drafted, so that's really good. So what I did is I looked through both of those and saw all the general things that were coming up over and over again about having a rule for every job that is set out, or having reasons as to why this policy is in, and the general practices and things like that. And I went through the policy and made sure all those things were there, basically. Let's see. Alright, key finding strengths. Pleasant overall flow. Nothing was mashed together. Everything was neat and tidy in its own little box and little bullet points. So that was very nice and appealing, and it was easier to read. It provides key points before going into depth, gives us overviews of what's going to be talked about, and then we kind of go into it if we need more detail. discusses why it's important to maintain the policy. Just as much as the policy itself, it helps enforce the policy if everybody knows why the policy is put in place. What overall related job titles involved and their duties. For instance, there is a local laptop manager that gets put in charge overall of the laptop, inventorying and upkeep and maintenance and authorizations and things like that. Goes over securified technicians that are used to set the access control lists, install the antivirus, and also teach the person in charge of the laptop how to use all those things. Provides practices that benefit both the physical side of protection as well as the logical side and good practices. So it says, hey, keep your authentication key somewhere else. Don't forget your stuff in the trunk of the car or in the airplane or at the hotel or anything like that. Specifics, it gives very specifics about certain things like items are inventoried and employment status of users tracked. So, in case they were to be terminated, you know where your laptop is, so you can go find it. There's no really major holes in the security policy. We're not forgetting about, attacks over Wi-Fi. We're not, worried about someone walking off with it because there's physical security things put in place where the laptop's not going to get stolen if we adhere to these policies. Alright, but our assignment is to find the weaknesses or areas for improvement. Sorry about that. AMD got to get a new video card. Anyway, there are some areas for improvement. I'll just kind of go over these. In the next section, I went through the actual changes that I made, so it'll give you a little more clarity on these. First one's coherency. All duties for each key position were mentioned, but were in separate areas from one another. It would have been nice if they were all put in and showed the duties of each and every person involved and what they were and how they coincided with each other. Like I said, all the information was there. It was just scattered in different parts of the policy. And also lacked clarity and authentication storage. These are all very specific things. So, like I said, overall the policies were great. Clarity and authentication stage. It requires a two-step authentication if you can, one of them being a separate key or something like that, usually on a USB drive or something like that. If it's a physical key, it needs to be separate, completely separate from the bag, not stored in the same place that the laptop is. Obviously, if the laptop gets stolen, it's easier to access because they have the key already in the bag. Next one, point related, specifically to the requisition of laptops under circumstances. Obviously, we know where it is because the policy told us to keep an inventory of it. However, and they are also tracking the status of a person, but there's nothing specifically that indicates that, hey, we need to get our stuff back. If you get fired, if you get sick, unfortunately, if you pass away, God forbid, things like that, that we need to have that sensitive information in our hands and not with somebody who's not trusted with the company. Next one, specifically mention or actually adding malware scanning requirement before opening any connectable devices. It says in there, and you'll see in the next report, that any connected devices need to be unconnected unless absolutely necessary. Well, obviously, sometimes it is necessary, so we need to be able to scan and make sure that the device is not infected itself or any files contained within it. That would add that extra security. That way, things aren't getting deleted, things aren't getting shared that shouldn't be shared. And another minor thing, outdated terminology, technology. You'll see in the next one, it's pretty funny. It says CD and floppy disk, and it doesn't even mention things like Blu-ray or even USB drive, thumb drives, anything like that. It's kind of funny. Also, side note, this is a United Kingdom publication, so they said, please, don't leave your laptop in the boot of your car. It took me a good solid 10 seconds to know that a boot of a car in the United Kingdom is the trunk. So there you go, that's fun. Anyway, let's look at the recommended solutions. it was already in place. All the white are the things that were already in place. All the things in yellow are the terminologies and verbology, I don't know, that's not even a word, that I added. The installation and configuration of laptop security functionality, including access control, encryption, and tamper resistance, should be undertaken by appropriately trained staff. That's great. On this one, I think because they're dealing with health records and things of very important security to people, there should be a second authentication with some form of management, because everybody has a slip up, but if we catch it early, then it's a lot easier to contain the problem. So I added, after completion, all items should be inspected by proper IT management to ensure proper configuration before being registered and released, covering all the bases. Next one's about registration. With this one, obviously it says it should registered and everything, but it should be routinely checked. Sometimes laptops get swapped, especially in the first phases of distribution, things like that. But or something happens on a workplace job, whatever, we need to know that this person always has this laptop at this time. So at the very end, should be uniquely identified and registered by the organization's records as information government security relevant items. And I put, and should be routinely checked for inaccuracies in inventory and placement. That way we just keep a running tab on where everything is at all times. This is the one I was talking about before, the requisition. There's obviously things that say that, yes, we are going to take it back if certain situations happen, but I just put it into words. If the event of a data compromise, theft, or any loss of privilege, the appointed LLM, which is the local laptop manager that we talked about earlier, should take proper and prompt action in obtaining the laptop in question and any related items. Okay, this is what I was talking about before. I'll remove media such as CD-ROM, and I put Blu-ray, USB drives, and they put floppy disk drives should be removed unless absolutely necessary. Little terminology things. Only certain people know about floppy disks. The younger generation won't, and they will probably be phased out if they aren't already. Next one, where two-factor authentication is used to ensure that the token is not stored, and I put in the same bag or container as a mobile device when left unattended. Obviously, if you're in the presence of your laptop and the device, they can be together. That's not a big deal. They can be in the same bag because you're there with the bag and you're there with the laptop. Anytime you walk away, you need to take one of the two things. That way, if one of them is stolen, the other one cannot be used. Voila. The very last one I did, the implement procedures and processes in relation to the provision and maintenance of antivirus. And I put the malware scanner in there. That's for the external devices that get connected that are useful for USB drives to have a lot of information on them to make sure that there are no viruses or anything that could potentially obtain information from our laptop. Alright, so that was the last recommendation that I had. To conclude everything, this is a really great policy. Went through why we needed to have the policy, who's in charge, all the people involved, what security measures are being used, what good practices need to be used. Overall, a great document. One of the biggest things I need to improve is start broadening the terminology to include all the new things that are happening with technology, all the new threats that are happening with technology. And especially right now, we're living in a world that is so, I want it now, everything's on the go. Me, I need it now, that there's going to be a very, very large need very soon for mobile devices to be used, like apps on tablets and smartphones. And because it's a medical industry, these all need to be secured so these medical records don't get out, and they all need to be stored universally. So there's a lot of potential in the technology department for this health services and things like that specifically. So it's nice to have a policy that's pretty thorough throughout as a good basis. It does need a little updating, but overall, really great policy. Thanks for listening.